I mean, that is about as white hot a take as you can serve up, man.
Wow.
Especially coming from somebody who knows the stuff, Feinbaum, who is definitely opinionated. There's no question. That's what you want. Otherwise, nobody's going to really react to anything you say. You want to have good, bold opinions. You want to be able to back it up. He knows college football as well as anybody. So I do think, while he's not even a huge Belichick fan, to my knowledge, I think I always hear him kind of I'm not even a huge Saban fan necessarily. Mm-hmm. It's not like he's out there, just propping up Saban unnecessarily. He's taking some shots at Nick Saban as well.
Yeah.
But he's much more familiar with Saban's approach than Belichick's approach. I'll ask the question, and I'll ask it respectfully. How the hell does Paul Feinbaum know what Bill Belichick is doing up with New England?
So I think this might be just extrapolating off of how their draft went. So we all know that Bill Belichick and Nick Saban are tight. They were on the same staff at one point in their careers, and they still have a very good relationships. The Browns, their demeanor is exactly the same. They look like they're not having a bit of fun, but it's clear that they collaborate on whether it's different plays or different styles or players in particular. Now, here was the New England Patriots draft. Mac Jones, and you'll notice something. Mac Jones, Alabama. They traded up to get Christian Barmore, Alabama. They drafted in the third round Ronnie Perkins, Oklahoma. In the fourth round, they drafted Ramondre Stevenson, Oklahoma. In the fifth round, they drafted Cameron McGrone, Michigan. He went Joshua Bledsoe, Missouri, William Sherman, Colorado, and Trey Nixon from UCF. The last three don't matter. But the first five picks, they're all like big programs that
we can watch them on TV.
Well, exactly. So you can watch them on TV. You know they're playing against elite competition. It's almost like, hey, hey Nick, tell me about this kid Christian Barmore, who, by the way, I love this kid, Christian Barmore, their D lineman. He's aggressive and he's disruptive in the interior. We'll see what kind of impact player he is, but still. Hey, Oklahoma.
Harbaugh.
Harbaugh. Tell me about this kid Cameron McGrone. It's like he can call up his colleagues and just say, should I draft this kid? Is he going to be a player for me? Yeah. So if he's talking about that, I get it. Now the stuff about last season, I mean, you lose Tom Brady. Of course you're going to take a step back. And by the way, if Cam hadn't gotten COVID and wasn't coming off a major surgery with his shoulder, who knows if they don't make the playoffs last year? You know what I mean? So I think it's a little bit of a shot. But if you're talking about the draft side of it, I can see where he's coming from.
You think it's a little bit of a stretch? Because it's definitely a direct shot. I mean, that is a shot
it's a
across
stretch.
the bow.
It's a stretch.
Hey, Bill, I'm getting ready to railroad you.
Yeah.
Hang on, buddy.
Yes.
That is a blast job right there.
To me, BT, it's a stretch when you talk about last season. The Patriots had, 11 opt-outs? Whatever it was.
It was 9.
Maybe it was 9. I can't remember what it was.
It was high single digits. Either way, they had a lot. Most in football.
A lot of opt-outs and a lot of impact players.
Yeah.
They were opting out. It wasn't just the backup tackle decided to opt out. It was 5 or 6, maybe even 7 starters.
A lot of defensive players, mostly.
That opted out, and they couldn't sustain leads like they had previously had in the season before. You lose Tom Brady. Your offense is a shell because there's not a skill position player who scares you on that team, and now you're taking a shot because the roster construction. I mean, that's not on Bill Belichick. Maybe it is to an extent, but not to the point where you're saying he's gotten lazy.
Well, but those are two different things. Like if you say that, hey, listen, Belichick is not drafted well for a while, that's one thing because there's no implication that he's not putting in the time.
Yes.
He might be scouring film, and I know in a non-pandemic year, going from during the offseason, going to different schools and doing his thing, he's just drafting the wrong guy. That is in stark contrast to saying, but he's just not putting the work in.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of people who are very diligent who make bad choices, or quite frankly, they draft maybe even the right player, but it just happens to be the wrong fit. There's a lot to unpack there. First of all, I agree with the first thing that Paul Feinbaum said. A lot of people do just assume they rubber stamp a move. Oh, good move, Belichick. Oh, Belichick, of course.
Yeah.
And that is lazy because that's an antiquated take that can be proven based on myriad draft failures. the last couple of years here, and at the wide receiver position the last decade, all right? So I don't think that that's an unnecessary or an erroneous shot. I think that is on point. I think that is an accurate depiction pertaining to that.
I could argue against it, but go ahead.
No, go.
Well, here's the reason. So I think Bill Belichick has had the luxury because of how precise the operation works, and it's led because of Tom Brady. Right? That every player is going to stick to the creed, and they're going to be right in the media. They're going to say all the right things. They're going to work their butts off. They're going to go the extra mile. They're going to, as they say, their cliche, do your job. Right? It came from on high, and then it permeated the locker room because the leaders said the exact same thing. Right? Mm-hmm. And so he had the luxury of knowing that I didn't need the best player, right? I don't need the best wide receiver or the best running back or the best linebacker. I need the guy who's going to know exactly what he needs to do in every situation, and that's going to help us win football games. And so in the draft, I can take some projects, right? I can reach a little bit because I see some potential. Mm-hmm. And what I think we found, as soon as you lose that control of that message as it permeates through the locker room, because now you have Cam Newton there, who's a great leader, but definitely different, right? Definitely different. And then he misses 2 weeks because of COVID at the very start of the season when he's trying to integrate his leadership. It just becomes I don't know, so many things went wrong. It's easy to explain, for me at least, why the Patriots took that misstep. But I can't chalk that up to Bill Belichick being lazy.
No, again, that's a separate part. It's the acumen versus the investment, I think is a good – and to question the acumen, you and I kind of disagree a little bit on the draft philosophy here or the draft results or the draft approach. But we're absolutely on the same page pertaining to the level of conviction in which, Belichick still has for his job. Listen, we've talked about Bill to the point where I've said many times on the show, I firmly believe he's going to be coaching for another team at some point. Mm-hmm. And part of the fuel behind that position for me is that I think that he's going to coach until you've got to pry the whistle off of his neck with a saw.
Yeah.
Like he's going to go into the grave wanting, hopefully he's 103, 110, whatever, but he's going to want to just coach football until he can't physically, his faculties are, not everybody's faculties betray him as they get older. You can conceivably have sharp wit at 95. So maybe that's not the best way to put it. But Belichick, to me, is not going to suddenly say, I'm no longer invested in this craft. Like Bill, to me, is a football lifer. Bill, here's who the basketball example. Now, the personality's not actually that dissimilar, although I think that the guy I'm about to mention was a pain in the behind, whereas Belichick shows a little more human side. Larry Brown.
Yeah, it's true.
Larry Brown.
It's a good example.
Was coaching high school a couple years ago after SMU.
That's right.
That guy's a coaching lifer, and I believe that Bill Belichick is. So to say that he's gotten lazy, I think is an unjust, really unnecessary shot at the greatest coach of all time.
Yeah, agreed. And it's.
But man, it's a hot take.
It is a hot take.
Oof.
Now, if he has another year that looked like last year where they're just kind of scuffling to be 500, then you can start questioning whether or not it's still working. The Patriot way, as he would define it, is it still working in this era of a player and of the league? And that's when it becomes a legitimate conversation. After one season, and you lose the best quarterback of all time, that's a little rough, if you ask me.
And by the way, this, I'm not saying this applies to Bill here, but it could be a situation where a guy who has been miles ahead of everybody in terms of thought process and focusing on the little minutia, knowing every crevice of the record book. We all know that about Bill. He's got everything down. But there could be a point, maybe we're entering this phase now. I'm not going to say that because I want to make sure that I have no problem saying what's on my mind. I don't want to be unfair to a guy that I've got great respect for in terms of his accomplishments in Bill. But this could be the beginning phase of the new age of football not necessarily meshing with the way his brain is wired.
It's a great point.
So he can be putting in all the time in the lab.
That's right.
Which I believe he is, and you believe he is, because he loves football as much as anybody, I think, on the planet. His dad was a coach. His guy was scouring film when he was 6 years old. I mean, and reading books about coach. He is a football man. He's not going to check out now. He's got too much pride.
Yep.
But he could be putting in 17-hour days, but he could just be reading the room wrong because the game is changing and he's not evolving.
Yeah.
That's possible.
Yeah, and honestly, BT, that happens.
Absolutely.
I mean, it happens in every sport. It happens in every industry.
Dude, exactly. If you and I are on the radio in our 60s, we're going to sound, now, maybe we won't sound out of touch as some other 60-something-year-olds who are on the radio, but we very well might.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, hey, after a while, yeah, we still know sports, but how we discuss it and how we dissect it might seem overly antiquated and just completely off path for the younger generation. I get it.
And it might be hard for us to learn how to do it like they're doing it again.
No, at that point, I won't even try. I'm not changing.
Yeah, it's true. Fire me if you don't like it.
No, I'll evolve with the medium in terms of all the, the technical stuff. And certainly, listen, I mean, started incorporating, all the numbers with baseball, which I was a little reticent to do about a decade or so ago, diving deep into fan graphs. Like, I never thought I'd even do that. If you asked me 20 years ago, you're going to be referencing batting average on ball and play, like things that I never even would think about. I've obviously, taken a liking to, and I really enjoy it. And I'll incorporate it once in a while. But no, I'm not changing that much. I mean, because I don't think that I would be any good if I changed too much. I think if you change fundamentally too much, I don't mean evolving. I don't mean taking wisdom and applying it and trying to be better. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about if you completely overhaul who you are. I don't know. Maybe it could work. But
but what happened? You
probably wouldn't work.
You tend to lose yourself.
That's what I'm saying.
Right. And
take any great actor.
Yeah, that's right. If they take a reach, it's hard.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit that bell to be notified when we drop fresh content.